Hey folks, welcome back. Krishna here, and in this video we're going to take a look at how you can draw everyday household objects using simple and compound volumetric shapes. So this is something that we've discussed in previous videos, but volumetric shapes are basically, they're in two basic varieties. You've got the simple volumetric shapes, which are the sphere, the cylinder, the cone, and the cube. And compound volumetric shapes are taking those simple volumetric shapes and making them into something that's a little bit more complex. So, for example, if we look at our desk lamp here, we can see that it is not made directly out of these primitive shapes, but there's a combination of shapes. We can see that the largest part of this lamp is really half of an ellipse. And then the base of the head of the lamp is basically a cylindrical shape. So when I'm approaching drawing something like this, I will look at what the largest shape is, and then what the second largest shape is, and the third largest shape, and so on and so forth. And I block those things out using compound volumetric shapes in this particular case. So I'll start off by just denoting a sphere. These are just rough sketches. And within that sphere, we have a cylinder. And then from this point, we can see that there's another cylinder. This cylinder has a little bit of curvature, and then it gets straight. And I'll indicate the contours, which are basically, if you were to imagine um, the lines that go around the surface to describe the surface, that's what a contour is. So in this case, these circular contours are describing that form. And then we have our base here, which is essentially, it looks to me like we've got one cap here, we've got another cap below, and there's a transition that occurs here. And then we have another cylinder that's at the very bottom. Now, in the beginning, when you're approaching a drawing in this fashion, it's going to seem like it's going to take you a much longer time to draw the object. But that's okay because you are using references, you're analyzing the object, and then you can always take this object and make it your own should you desire to do so. You can come up with your own lamp once you understand the underlying structure. So from this point, I can start to refine the drawing. I'll come back in and denote the fact that we have an opening here, and we have our lamp. We have a bulb, which is essentially going to be, in this case, it looks to be spherical from this angle. And I always recommend for those folks that are learning how to draw to start out with just simple everyday objects. It's not exactly the most, I guess, appealing thing to draw, but if you are going to be drawing characters, they are going to be interacting with props and other objects. So now we've got our lamp. Hey, Krishna here, just to let you know that I've got a new brush pack for Photoshop and Procreate. Check it out. It's under 10 bucks, 7 brushes. Thanks for watching, and now back to the video. It is a series of compound shapes that are put together. We can hide the underdrawing, and there we go. So now let's take a look at utilizing this knowledge for something like a stack of books. How do you begin? Where do you start? Well, we're going to be using one of our primitive volumetric shapes, which in this case is going to be the rectangular structure. So again, I'm starting out with a very loose sketch. Now, all these books are overlapping one another, so making it difficult to see their entire form. But I have a little bit of an idea of the overall angle of the book. So this is the bottommost spine, and then I'll draw another set of lines here. And I'm using my entire arm to make these lines. I will probably need a little bit more space, so let me just move my layers out a little bit. And I can draw through the form here too, just so that I have a visual. We have another book that's a little bit smaller. And so on and so forth. So basically, I'm stacking these books, keeping in mind the edges are going to have a little bit of overlap. And again, rough sketch. I'm just going to leave the stack like so and just come back in and formalize the drawing a little bit. So now in my second pass, what I'll do is I'll just draw those lines. We can see that there's a little bit of a ridge here for this book. You see part of its spine. I can also make some course corrections here, like if there's obviously an area where I have to add a little bit more to the object, I can do that very easily. And I'm not focused on details at this particular stage. I'm just trying to get the basic structure set up. So this is where the top is going to be. I'm not drawing all of the books here. But now I've got something that looks believable. And I can always make modifications. I just noticed that this bottom book, I can probably extend these lines out. Very easy to do at this stage because I'm not dealing with details. And I've got now a stack of books. And I can always come back in and add whatever details I want. Let's now take this to another example here, which is something that's a little bit more organic. So it's not as easy to define what the underlying primitive volumetric shapes are. But what I do in this case is I will start out with a primitive volumetric shape just to establish the proportions. So for something like a backpack, I'm drawing a 2-point perspective box. I'll find the midpoint of each segment. I'll make some connections here, and I'll tell you how we're going to use that here in a minute. Being able to identify the midpoints of objects, especially your primitive shapes, I think is a really, really good skill to learn. So now that I've got this box in place here, this basically matches the angle of this backpack. And what we'll notice here is that this backpack actually has a little bit of a curve, right? It's almost like it's like a tombstone type shape. It looks something like that. And then a little bit above from the midline of this backpack, we have an extension. There's basically another pouch. Now notice I'm not drawing any details here. This is just keeping it super simple. It's still rough, but that's okay. We've got like an area here. We've got a little zipper, and then we've got a handle. Like so. So now I have something that I can work from, and I can start to add extra details. So this underlying drawing that actually has a grid really helps me in terms of placing my objects and making sure that the proportions themselves line up. So is this going to be an exact one-to-one perfect rendition? No. but it can be. I can utilize the same technique and spend a little bit more time and make it look really refined here. But this is enough for me to basically have an idea of creating a solid backpack, and then there's like some kind of an emblem here or something. And so from here, I can start to add whatever details I want. So that's what I would recommend if you're starting out with drawing and you're trying to get better at your craft. Utilize references, they're really helpful. And then start with inanimate objects. They're much simpler to look at, and even something that is organic and maybe not readily identifiable as a volumetric shape. If you just start off with one of those primitive shapes and you utilize the grid, you can find landmarks to start to break this down into something that you can actually draw. So you're working from more general to more specific. So if you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up so more folks can find it. Let me know what questions you have with regards to how to think when you actually begin digitally drawing. And I will catch you in the next video. Later.